Give and Take by Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed. Chapter 2, The Midoriyas. Just a quick note for those of you that are wondering, Chapter 1 on this fic is just tags and notes from the authors because this is a re-upload that has been updated. Excuse me. But so we're starting with the first story chapter. Massive thanks to the two authors for letting me adapt their story, and I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into the fic. Origin, Part 1. Dagaba Municipal Beach Park. Toshinori used to come here often. It had been a beautiful, thriving beach once, with white sand and clear blue ocean as far as the eye could see. He and Nana had met here many times. It had been a special place for both of them, but now it was destroyed. Just like she had been. Just like his body had been. It's been 2 years, and he was still reeling from that terrible battle with All for One. His body had become emaciated in his true form. He wasn't able to truly live, just barely clinging on to survival. Fighting as a hero was getting worse and worse, and he was sure he wouldn't be able to do it for much longer. He maybe had a few years, if anything, but he knew he was going to have to find a successor, and soon. Toshinori gripped his bad side gently, watching the sunset from behind the piles of rubble. Even with the trash in the way, the sunset was still as beautiful as he remembered it to be. Maybe he ought to come back here more often. Being in this place was nice, calming, though he could do without dredging up thoughts of his mentor. He just knew she'd be so heartbroken to see this place for what it is now. Probably would have demanded that they clean it. He would try, but he had precious little time with his power, only being able to hold his muscle form for a few hours a day, and he was going to need every second. Though, wouldn't it be lovely if someone could clean it? It was a wishful thought, if anything. As that thought passed through his head, his eyes were drawn to a particular pile of junk. Someone was climbing it. They were hard to see, just a silhouette made by the setting sun behind them. They seemed small, with a head of fluffy curls being their most defined feature. Toshinori watched as he climbed to the top of the pile of junk, before pushing what looked like a medium-sized kitchen appliance, ruined by time, off the pile to the beach floor below. Ouch! A man's voice rang from the beach. The person on top of the pile visibly winced before calling down below, their voice carrying on the wind to Toshinori. Sorry, you okay, Dad? It was a child's voice. Just what the hell was going on? Toshinori's feet were moving before he could put together his next thought. He stalked down the beach, twisting between the piles of junk until he came to a small clearing in the rubble. The boy had jumped down, his messy green hair taking up most of his head. He was tiny, looking no older than 9 or 10. The child stood next to an adult, who was on the ground, holding his foot in his hand, hissing softly in pain. He looked to be in his late 30s, with a head of neat white hair. The appliance that had dropped was on his side next to him. Does it hurt? The boy asked. Not too bad. Shocked me more than anything else. I don't think you broke any toes, the man said. Something about his voice was familiar. For a moment, Toshinori was reminded of the deep tones of... But that couldn't be right. He was dead. Even if he weren't, he would never be here, with the child. His son, by the way the boy called him Dad. Oh, good, the boy said, his shoulders relaxing. Excuse me, one sec, y'all. Everything okay? Toshinori asked, stepping forward. What are you two doing out here on this beach? No one comes here anymore. They both looked up in a mild surprise, the boy inching closer to his father. Just fine, the man said. My son and I are doing some cleaning, trying to clear the beach. He dropped this mini fridge on my foot. He motioned to said mini fridge lying on its side. Toshinori nodded. Are you injured? Nah, I don't think so. He stood slowly, testing his foot by putting some weight on it. Hurts a bit, but I think I'll be just fine. He stepped forward towards Toshinori. He had freckles dusting his cheeks. There were a lot of them. Thank you for your concern, though. Good. I'm glad someone is trying to fix this beach up. I used to come here a lot when I was younger. It means a lot to me, actually. So thank you both for doing what you can, he said. Means a lot to us, too, the boy said, poking his head out from behind his father. He didn't look much like him, his face round where his father's was angular, his eyes wide and green compared to the narrow and red. But he did seem to inherit his father's freckles. Apparently, when I was a baby, he and my mom took me here. His father put a hand on his head, ruffling the boy's curls. That was a long time ago, though. Since I was away, it somehow became this. He gestured around. So, I figured, between wanting to see my old date spot with my wife back, and Izuku here wanting to do hero training, it seemed like a good idea to spend our free time cleaning it. Hero training? Toshinori asked. Yeah! Izuku yelled. He left his father's side. I'm gonna be a hero! UA's entrance exams are only 4 years away, but I'm so far behind. I have a lot of catching up to do if I hope to make it. His father sighed softly. Izuku. Do you like heroes? Toshinori asked. I love heroes, he said seriously. Especially All Might. He's not kidding, his father said. His bedroom is a shrine. Because he's the best, Izuku rounded on his father. He's so strong, no one has to worry about him. Used to be true. Not so much now. But he'd rather die before he let a child know that. He's always smiling so you feel safe. That was sweet. I want to be a hero just like that. When I say I am here, I want people to feel saved. Izuku then gave Toshinori the biggest smile he'd ever seen from anyone. I'm sure you will someday, he said earnestly. His father checked his phone inside. It's getting late, Izu. Grab the mini fridge. We'll put it on the truck and drop off the junk at the trash yard, he said. Then we can pick up some katsudon for dinner. Izuku cheered and ran to grab the mini fridge. He picked it up with ease and carried it off the beach. It was nice meeting you. Ooh, the man said, pausing with a questioning look. Yagi Toshinori, he smiled. Gotcha. Midoriya Hisashi. He smiled as brightly as his son did. Have a good night, Yagi-san. Hopefully we'll see you enjoy the beach someday, he said, grabbing a large piece of trash himself and following after his son. Toshinori smiled after them. It ended up being a few weeks before Toshinori came across the Midoriyas again. He walked past the beach, holding 2 shopping bags in his hands. It was a clear Saturday afternoon, and the early summer weather was beautiful. He stopped to enjoy the sea breeze, only to realize how different the beach looked from just a few weeks prior. An entire section of junk had been cleared away. There was still clearly a lot to go, but the difference was startling. He thought of that father and son, their smiling faces. Had they done this much work in such a short period of time? That was... His thoughts were cut off by the sound of laughter. A deep man's laughter and the high-pitched giggle of a child. Toshinori's feet were, again, moving before he knew it. He padded down the beach, walking over the sand before he came upon another clearing in the junk. Hisashi and Izuku were there. Hisashi was standing, one hand leaning on the hood of a rusted car, the other clutching his stomach, laughing so hard he was having a hard time keeping himself upright. Young Izuku, on the other hand, was laying on his back, knees to his chest, rolling with laughter. Toshinori smiled at the scene. "You two seem to be having a good time," he said. Hisashi smiled at him. "Ah, hello, yeah." He broke off with another fit of laughter. "Yagi-san, how are you?" He took several deep breaths, still shaking with laughter. Izuku flopped on his back, giggling softly. "I'm doing well. I was just getting some groceries when I noticed how different the beach looked already. Then I heard you laughing and, well, I was curious." "Oh yeah. Izu, show Yagi-san what you just showed me," Hisashi said. Izuku sat up, grinning wildly. "Okay." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath before his face contorted. It looked rather like the face he made while in his All Might persona. That in itself was quite funny, but... "I am here." Izuku's voice dropped, as low as the young boy could make it. It was so stupid, so ridiculous, so... Toshinori tossed his head back, laughing harder than he had in years. He laughed and laughed until he felt the familiar sensation of blood rushing up his throat, leaving him gagging, coughing, and hacking as he spat blood on the ground. He doubled over, dropping his shopping bags, but before he touched the ground, a pair of warm hands grabbed him, keeping him upright. Hisashi looked up at him, frowning deeply. "Yagi-san, are you alright?" he asked. Izuku was at his other side, a small hand gently holding his wrist. He coughed again. Yes, I am. Thank you. Sorry about that. I hope I didn't frighten you, young Izuku," he said, his voice hoarse. Izuku shook his head. "It's okay, Yagi-san. It's not the first time I've seen someone do that," he said. "Are you dying?" "Izuku!" Hisashi reprimanded. Toshinori only smiled softly. "It's quite alright." He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. "I'm not sure. I was hurt very badly a long time ago, and it still causes me a lot of pain. But I am still here, and I intend to keep it that way for at least a little while longer." "Izu, why don't you get back to work? I'll have Yagi-san sit down for a few minutes," he told his son. Izuku nodded before turning off to grab another piece of trash to carry away. "Here, sit down." He led Toshinori to an old dryer, having him sit. "Do you need something to drink, or...?" "That would be wonderful. I have a few bottles of water in one of my shopping bags," he said. Hisashi nodded and found the bottles in question. There were 3 of them. "If you'd like, you and Izuku can have the other 2. He blinked, handing one to Toshinori. "Are you sure? I have some in the car." "Nonsense." Toshinori waved him off. "These are still cold. The ones in your car are probably warm by now," he said, uncapping his water. Hisashi held up one as Izuku came back onto the beach. Izu, Yagi-san has a water bottle for you. Here.
Oh, thank you,
Izuku said. He stopped about 15 feet away from them and held out his hand. At once, the water bottle Hisashi was holding flew to his son's waiting and open hand. Izuku uncapped it and drank half of it in several large gulps.
Thank you so much, Yagi-san,
he said, putting the bottle down as he ran to grab another trash pile. Toshinori watched him with mild interest. Is that his quirk? Huh? Oh, yeah, Hisashi said. It's his mother's quirk. Pull. He can pull objects towards himself. It's dependent on his physical strength, though. Ah, Toshinori said. I see. Hence all the strength training and clearing the beach. That's right. Izuku has always wanted to be a hero, so I told him I'd help him get there. We're still doing some trial and error, seeing ways we can push his quirk. I have a few more theories on ways to make his pull stronger. We know it's a matter of what he can pull with his physical body, but his quirk is a mental one. That might mean there could be a way to increase the ability of pull without putting more strain on his body, but that's entirely theoretical. I'm sorry, Yagi-san. Hisashi cut himself off, a flush dusting his cheeks before his freckles. I get carried away sometimes. Toshinori smiled. No, please, keep going. I was interested. You seem very interested in his quirk. Not just Izu's, Hisashi said. I'm a quirk consultant. Ah, yes, I've met a few of them before. Not many out there, he said thoughtfully. Do you work for an agency or... Freelance, Hisashi said. I do occasionally work with a few hero agencies from time to time. Sometimes, I'll go to schools and have talks with kids whose quirks are still developing. Or even real little kids. Help them figure out just what exactly their quirk is, and its limitations for their paperwork. He smiled. That sounds like hard work. Quirks, especially lately, have been getting more and more complicated. Hisashi sighed deeply. You're telling me. I remember when quirks were simple. I can move things with my mind, or I have super strength. Or even just, I'm fast. He sighed. I just had a kid last week. His quirk was bizarre. If he touched you, he would turn your entire body into a film reel. The only way to put you back together was if he fed your film reel into his chest. You go through him and you reform on the other side of his body, but he watches your entire life play out in a short amount of time. I feel bad for the kid, honestly. That's such a rough power to have. Like, old film reel? Yeah. The people just fall apart. Like their skin and bones just peel away into film. He said. It was freaky to watch. Toshinori blinked. Huh, was all he managed to say. He turned to watch Izuku. He held his hand out, pulling several cans littering the ground towards him with his quirk, letting them all fall into a cardboard box in front of him. Pull is his mother's quirk? He asked. Hisashi nodded. Yep, exactly like Inko's. His voice was soft as he spoke the name. What about you? He asked. Oh, just fire breathing, he said. He said something else under his breath, but Toshinori couldn't hear him. He probably wasn't meant to. What about you, Yagi-san? What's your quirk? One sec, y'all. Sorry about that, y'all. Toshinori smiled. I'm afraid I was born quirkless. Izuku stopped, looking over his shoulder, a look of wonder on his face.
Really?
He asked, running up to them.
You're quirkless?
Izu. I am, Toshinori said. It was technically true, and certainly his cover story while in this form. The boy's smile softened.
That must be rough,
He said.
but I understand. My quirk came late, so everyone thought I was quirkless until last year.
He almost choked on more blood. What? But you're, what, 9?
I'm 10! Almost 11!
Izuku said, putting his hands on his hips indignantly. You got your quirk at 9 years old? He'd never heard of someone's quirk manifesting so late. That should be impossible. The only way he would have gotten a quirk like that was... But he was dead. It must be something else. How on earth did that happen? Hisashi frowned deeply. He and Izuku shared a look. Finally, Hisashi spoke. The doctors think it was a stress response. To what?
I got it my mom died.
Izuku said softly.
I was talking to her and holding her hand, and she just died. Then, after I wanted to pull her blanket up over her, since she seemed cold, and the blanket just came to my hand, like she used to do when she tucked me in.
It was a plausible story. Certainly, the tale of his mother dying seemed to ring true, but years of being a pro taught him to trust his gut. Something about that story wasn't right. The Midoriyas seemed like good people, but Toshinori knew there was more to be found here. I see, he finally said. I'm sorry for your loss, he told them both. Thank you, Hisashi said. Losing my wife has been difficult. He frowned deeply. But I still have Izu here, so we're going to be just fine. And at that, Izuku smiled brightly. It became a routine after that. Toshinori would go grocery shopping on Saturday mornings, and then spend the rest of his afternoon sitting on a pile of junk, watching Izuku and his father pile trash in the back of a truck. Hisashi didn't actually clean much. He mostly instructed Izuku, sometimes having him pull the large pieces of metal with his mind, and other times by his hands. As the weeks rolled by, the trash slowly disappeared. Little by little, and young Izuku got stronger and stronger. For a 10-year-old, he was very strong. Toshinori had grown quite fond of the Midoriyas. Izuku was so funny and very sweet. He also had zero sense of self-preservation. More than once while pulling a piece of trash from a pile, he was almost covered in junk from a landslide. Toshinori also noted that the boy seemed to have a higher than average pain tolerance, and was one time when he was rammed in the head with a hunk of metal, he simply shrugged off the pain. When Toshinori asked him about it, all Izuku said was,
It hurts less than explosions.
Hisashi sighed next to Toshinori, pinning Izuku with a hard look. I thought you said Katsuki was leaving you alone now, he asked. Izuku cringed.
Did I say that?
He asked.
I meant to say he mostly leaves me alone.
You said it was better now that your quirk manifested. Who is... Toshinori started.
It is better. He stopped calling me useless, at least. Now he just screams about fighting me and stomping me,
Izuku said.
He doesn't stop people from talking to me anymore. Not that they do, but...
I can talk to the school, Hisashi said. Izuku shook his head.
You and I both know that'll just set Kachan off more.
He sighed and grabbed the metal piece that had ringed him.
It's fine, Dad, honestly. It's less of him picking on me and more of us having a fair fight. I can handle fighting.
Hisashi's lips formed a thin line. I still don't like this, Izuku. I know you think you can handle this, but there's no shame in asking for help.
I know that. I do. I promise I do, but I really don't need help. I know how to handle Kachan. Honestly, sometimes it's fun. And he really is getting better. I cried yesterday. You know what he said? He said when we get into UA.
Izuku smiled.
We, Dad. He thinks I can do it.
Who is Kachan? Toshinori asked.
My best frenemy.
Izuku answered cheerily. His bully.
Kachan was my bully. I told you, it's better now.
He turned to Toshinori.
He used to make fun of me for being quirkless. But I'm not quirkless anymore. So now he's way better. We're more like rivals, who sometimes go to the arcade together and gush about All Might, then we get into a fistfight. It's fun.
What an odd relationship. I see. Hisashi only sighed again, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You're gonna send me to an early grave, Izuku. It was hot. Scorching hot. Toshinori almost couldn't find it in him to leave the house that Saturday morning, the air like a wall. But the memory of a childlike smile with wide green eyes, and a strong jaw with a smattering of freckles under red eyes pulled him from his cool apartment. He walked down the street, passing the beach, grocery bags in hand. He found his usual entrance, about to walk down the steps, when he heard a familiar deep voice. Yagi-san. He turned. Hisashi and Izuku were both standing next to an old-looking truck. The bed is already full of drunk. We got an early start today, and finished already. But Izu said we should wait for you. Toshinori smiled and made his way over to the truck. Ah, beating the heat, I see. He asked. More than that, Hisashi said before Izuku cut in.
It's my birthday.
Izuku cheered.
Dad said we'd do something cool, but I wanted to train.
He said.
But it's all done. We're gonna get Katsudan and go bowling.
He smiled, a bit sad he wouldn't get to spend the day with what was quickly becoming two of his favorite people. I see. Well, I hope you have fun. Izuku smiled, grabbing his wrist as Hisashi slung a warm arm up and over his shoulder. You're
coming with, aren't you, Yagi-san?
Izuku asked. You want me to go with you on your birthday plans? He asked softly. He insisted. Hisashi said with a smile.
You're a friend. Of course I want you to come.
Toshinori thought he might cry. He didn't, but the temptation was there all the same. I would love to come with you, he said softly. And so, Toshinori piled into their truck and off they went. It was a lovely day. The Katsudan was otherworldly, and while he royally sucked at bowling, it was still a blast, no matter how many gutter balls he threw. Hisashi, as it turned out, was quite talented at the sport, and Izuku was no slouch himself. This seemed to be something the two did together often. The day ended with Hisashi and Toshinori in the front seat. Izuku was asleep in the back, clutching an All Might plushie Toshinori had managed to win from a claw game at the bowling alley. Hisashi pulled into the parking lot of his apartment building. He whistled softly. "Damn, Miyagi-san. I didn't know you lived in such a fancy place," he said, marveling at the tile building. He laughed a bit. "Yes, well, thank you for today," he said. "I enjoyed it." Toshinori looked over his shoulder. Izuku was on his side, pulling the plush closer to his face. "He's a very kind boy. You did a wonderful job raising him." Hisashi sighed softly, watching his son as well. "I'm afraid that doesn't have much to do with me. I wasn't around much. Not until 2 years ago." "Really? You could have fooled me. You're so close. He adores you." That's Izuku's personality. He never once held a grudge about me not being around. He doesn't ask about it. I know he wants to. He wants to know why I was gone for so long, but... He trailed off. "I had something I had to do. It failed. I didn't do it. I'm glad it failed, though. I don't know if..." He shook his head as if to get rid of the thoughts. 2 years ago, something happened to me. I was hurt badly, but it woke me up to what was really important. I want to tell Izuku why I was away, but there are gaps in my memory. Whole years of my life I don't remember. Toshinori's eyes widened. "Entire years?" he asked. "That's..." "I know," Hisashi said, and reached back to brush the hair out of Izuku's face. "But I don't mind. I don't think I want those memories back. I didn't used to be such a good person. Inko always saw the best of me, though. She met me when I wasn't good. She still fell for me, though. She still stayed with me. I met her on the beach," he said. "Dagobah?" "Yes. I met her there 12 years ago. We fell in love. We had Izuku. Then I left. It's my biggest regret. I came back after I'd been broken. She took me back in with loving arms. So did he. He hardly knew me. No, he didn't know me much at all. But they took me back and never asked why I had left, or why I came back. It's far more than I deserved. I wish I hadn't never left, because after I came back, Inko got sick. Then she died. Now it's just me and Izu." It was a startling confession. Midoriya Hisashi did not strike him as the kind of man who'd leave his wife and child behind. He'd clearly gone through something terrible, but he'd come out on the other side. And Toshinori was a hero, and he'd always prided himself on saving as many people as possible. "Midoriya-san," he said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "Izuku is very lucky to have you as a father." Hisashi smiled at him. "And that's kind of you to say." "I mean it. It's quite clear to me that you love him, that you'd do anything for him. And while I don't know your reasons for leaving, you must have had them. I also can't speak on whether those reasons were good enough to miss the first several years of your son's life. The point is, you're here now. You're all he has left, so just don't miss any more." "I won't," Hisashi said, his voice low and determined. "I promised him." I told him I would always be there for him. Izuku is a special kid. He's gonna be a great hero someday. And I want to be with him every step of the way. All the way to the top. Toshinori only smiled. Weeks turned into months, but every Saturday, without fail, Toshinori would return to the beach. Every week, the beach became cleaner and cleaner. It was bittersweet. The place he'd come to meet Nana became closer to what it was in his memories. The time he had with the Midoriyas seemed to be shrinking away. When he came to the beach on a chilly December afternoon, he found it spotless. His heart broke just as much as it had soared. Izuku and Hisashi were coming up the path, Izuku holding the last piece of junk. They both smiled warmly at him.
Morning, Yagi-san.
Izuku greeted.
Look, we did it.
He smiled at the two of them, as brightly as he could manage.
I see. It looks wonderful.
He looked at Hisashi. He smiled right back.
I'm very proud of both of you. Thanks, Yagi,
Hisashi said.
We're gonna go get Katsudon, right?
Toshinori asked with a smile. Hisashi flushed.
It's Izu's favorite. And mine too.
He said, rubbing the back of his neck.
Wanna come? My treat.
Izuku smiled at them before running to put the last chunk of garbage in the back of the truck.
I'd enjoy that,
he said,
since I probably won't be seeing you as much now that you're finished.
Hisashi only smiled.
What? Are you kidding? I'm not giving up my Saturday Katsudon.
Izu was being put into self-defense lessons starting next week. After them, I promised him the three of us would go get Katsudon.
After every lesson? As long as you're free,
Hisashi said with a grin. Toshinori smiled, brighter and wider than he ever could as All Might. Alrighty, y'all. That is the end of the first chapter. Absolutely love it, and honestly, I'm having a lot of fun reading this one already. I love the story so much, and it's just, I've been looking forward to this, and that's why I moved this one up. Don't worry, I'll still be doing some of the other series as well as we go throughout the weeks, and I'm going to be trying to do more of the voice acted episodes. But I really wanted to get started with this one in particular just because I absolutely adore the story, and I have a strong feeling a lot of you guys will too. Massive props to both Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed. And again, thank you guys so much for letting me adapt the story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Please feel free to make any comments or questions down below in the comments section. I try my best to respond to every single comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao for now, lovelies.